Hello and welcome to ScotDance USA's World Champion Dancers and Teachers interview series. I'm Emma Schiff. The Professional Development Committee at ScotDance USA wants to help the Highland dancing world stay motivated during these challenging times. That's why we're talking to the best of the best, World Champion dancers and their teachers. We'll learn about how they achieved what they did, plus their advice for dancers and teachers struggling during quarantine. We hope these videos can bring you inspiration. Enjoy. Today, I'm interviewing former world champion Rachel McLagan. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me. You have been really active in keeping dancers engaged during this time. Tell me about some of the things that you've been involved in.
Oh, it's been a kind of crazy time actually. So the first thing that happened was just it was really out of the blue. I had been due to go to New York for Tartan Week with our dance group and with a band that we've worked with, a band called Drums and Roses that we're very friendly with, and we were due to head over in April for New York Tartan Day and the parade and a couple of performances. And then obviously with everything that happened, that was cancelled. So the Tartan Week committee had decided they were going to do something virtual instead and have a virtual Tartan Day parade. So that was sort of the first thing that caught my attention. And then just, from speaking to the team and the dancers and the girls, I thought that there's something in that, that's an opportunity actually, just partly thinking to kind of help the committee, just keep the bit of buzz about the event and make up for the fact that it hadn't been able to happen in real life. And it just seemed, people don't really get the opportunity to do something like dance in the New York Tartan Day Parade very often. So, we thought we'll have a bit of fun with it. And yeah, that was sort of the starter, and that skyrocketed. Couldn't believe how many people took part in that. I think the sort of Wednesday before we closed the video applications, we had about 150, and in the last day and a half we got 700. so
Wow.
it was one of those things that we thought, oh, this would be quite a nice thing to do. And we teamed up with Change of Step with Marielle and the girls, and the Footworks dancers with Beck and Jess in Australia, and Morgan and Dougie and Kate, and the Shot of Scotch dancers in New York and Vancouver, and a few other people as well that we kind of brought into it. So it was a kind of a global effort. And Morgan said to me at the time, she said, you do realize you could get like 1,000 videos. And I went, don't be silly. People, we might get a couple of hundred if we're lucky. So yeah, it took off, and that sort of, I think that just kind of inspired, me and the girls and the team to just keep trying to find, ways to help people through it, because I don't teach. I've moved around a lot with my job, so I don't teach a regular class. I do a lot of workshops and things, but I don't have a class to kind of contribute in that way. So what else can we offer through the things that we've done with flings and things? So we did the tutorial, and we're working with the internationals team in Australia, pulling together some ideas for a sort of virtual celebration there. And with ScotDance USA as well, we've got a lot of exciting things happening. So it's been a bit of a bizarre sort of turn of events, but hopefully people have enjoyed and gotten something out of it, and it's just served as a little bit of a distraction, I guess, for people.
I think it's a perfect time to get into choreography because, especially during that championship season, it can be kind of hard to find time to just dedicate some time in your practice to doing some fun choreography. And now is a great time. And with all these challenges and stuff, and I've seen all your videos, it's like the perfect time to learn some tricky new steps, and not even necessarily all of them being like, rigid Highland.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a really good time to get, into that part. But aside from doing choreography and staying involved that way, what advice would you have for dancers that were competing at a championship level, trying to stay involved and practicing in that way? Because you were obviously competing at that level for a long time.
Yeah, I think, as you say, the choreography side of things is a great way to sort of to have fun and try something that you maybe wouldn't normally get time to do, and and be that sort of fun distraction. But if for dancers that are in that really competitive mindset and that had their hearts set on a strong competitive year, I would say take the time to sort of to reset, to take a bit of a step back from from everything and go, well, what are those goals that I've always had that I've never really had time to to work on? Is it things like is there a particular part of your your technique that you've always wanted to work on, but because we're in such and I don't know if it's maybe the same everywhere else, but certainly in Scotland, our competitive season is so intense and so long. There aren't, if you're competing all the time. There aren't that many breaks where you really get to dissect your dancing and pull apart all those bits of technique. So this is a perfect time, I think, to break things down, build them up, fix those things that, you've always had up there going, I must work on that a bit more when I get time, and things like, strength and conditioning. This is a great time to understand a bit more about, cross training and look at those areas of your dancing, because that's something I think that we've become more aware of in recent years, and there are a lot more resources now available to us as Highland dancers. But it's something that takes a long time, I think, to learn how to do it properly and to really sort of integrate that sort of strength and fitness training as part of your regular practice routine. So while we normally get so distracted by the championship steps and what you're dancing in competition, but now we don't have that pressure. You've got this huge span of time. So yeah, look for things like like that you can build into your routine and take the opportunity to fix things that you've maybe not quite had the chance to dig into before.
For you, is there something that if you were still competing and you had all this time off right now, is there that one correction that you never really got all the way fixed that you would be like, oh, this is my time to focus on it?
I don't think I have just one. My big one, I have to say, it would actually be that the strength and conditioning element of it would be a big one for me. I think it's not something I focused on massively as when I was younger. I got to understand a bit more as I was older and when I was coming back from injuries, because obviously that makes you think about, well, why does this still hurt and what am I doing that's contributing to that? So it was only as I was a much older dancer, I say much older in dancing terms, I was in my early 20s, really late teens, early 20s, that I started to sort of analyze that side of things, and realize that actually I probably needed to spend a lot more time looking at, the overall sort of physiology and, break down the way my body was moving and the way I was carrying out those movements, and look at the, the strength and fitness side of it a bit more. I did a lot of repetitive dancing. You danced through the dances a lot when I was younger. But that's something I certainly think I could have done more of. And now, with the benefit of a few more years experience and awareness of that side of things, it's something I kind of wish I'd maybe known a bit more about back then and had focused on. And in terms of technique, probably my back steps and just my general turnout. And I think that the turnout side of things probably links quite well into the sort of strength and conditioning, that appreciation of what muscles is it that I actually use. And instead of just thinking about turn your knees back, push your knees back, turn your landing foot out, well, what actually, what are the building blocks that go into enabling your body to do that? So yeah, that's probably my big ones: strength, turnout, and back steps.
So once you were in your late teens, early 20s, and you said you started focusing more on strength and stamina, did your practice routine change then?
It did change quite a lot then. I had come off the back of a couple of, I'd broken my left foot twice and had various injuries in between times, partly due to just, coming back too quickly and not really thinking about all of those things, but just going straight back into, I feel better, so I'll just dance the way I used to dance. So had a few years of struggles around that, and then when I came back to competing, I was then learning from Shendel, and that was a big part of it, was looking at the way I was hopping and what was contributing to that constant pain I was feeling, and trying to work our way through that, because I wanted to dance again. I didn't feel like I was done yet. I didn't feel like I was ready to finish, but I didn't want to keep dancing and be in pain. So we completely changed the way I was hopping, and that was the first 3 months coming back was pretty much all done in trainers, and it was really basic movements, hopping, paddy bas, the way I landed for shuffles, everything, the way I landed for assembles, and took off from disassembles. We looked at all of that, and just in trainers, and retrained my legs, my body, to understand how to distribute my weight properly, and that certainly helped. And we did a lot more in terms of fitness, Shendel was always every class would go to, right, what full dance are we starting with? I'd be like, oh, I'm not quite warmed up yet. Give me another minute. But yeah, she really sort of instilled that in me, was no, every class we're going to get through at least 3 of the championship dances, because you have to know when you go out there that you're going to be able to do that. And that made a difference, I think, to my whole approach, because I'd always been really anxious, really, really nervous going into competitions and championships. And I don't think I fully understood when I was younger that a large part of that was due to the fact that I was actually nervous about my fitness as much as anything else. I would be terrified of how I was going to feel in the last set of high cuts in the first step of the sword, how I was going to feel in those last 16 high cuts in the reel. And it's not that I didn't dance through whole dances or didn't practice that, but not maybe as much as I needed to get myself into the frame of mind where I knew I was going to be capable of getting through all of those high cuts and all of those dances and feel good, feel still strong at the end of it. So yeah, that was a big thing that Shendel and I worked on, and it changed the way I practiced. So yeah.
So did you suffer from nerves just maybe a few days before the competition? You were nervous about going into it, or was it before each dance you were really nervous and going up on stage was it a setback, or did the nerves help you?
In truth, it was the whole thing. It was a couple of days before, it was the night before, it was between dances. My favorite thing was bowing at the end of the reel. Yeah. And I loved being around competitions, but I did, championships, I was very, very nervous. I had really high expectations of myself. I felt like others had high expectations of me as well. And as I say, I would, and latterly I began to realize that I had been nervous about, the fitness side of things too. So yeah, I felt nervous, and the whole package made me nervous. And the night before, I would lie in my bed going over the dances in my head. I don't know what good I possibly thought that was going to do, but all it did was stop me from sleeping well. And like the morning of, I would be nervous going through, the routine of getting my hair done, and I wouldn't eat the morning for a competition, which is ridiculous. And again, it took me till I was an adult, despite years of my mum saying you have to eat something. It was, I'd be sort of in my early 20s before I went, oh, she's got a point there. So yeah, I think it was a whole sort of combination of things that made me nervous. And I think in some ways, nerves are good for you, that it kind of converts to adrenaline, and it shows that it means something to you. I don't know that I would want to go up there and not feel anything. And it's just about learning to manage that, I think, and being able to convert that nervous energy into a positive, and I was always able to still go up and dance, and for the most part, I think, perform reasonably well. Like everyone, you'd have good days and bad days, and the odd times where it would be overwhelming. But my mum was a really good influence in that sense, and she was very good at doing the, is the sun still going to come up tomorrow? Great. Okay, then off you go. Let's go. It's a dance. You'll get there. So yeah, it's a difficult skill though. And I think, we expect quite a lot of young dancers, putting them in these positions where they're going out in front of not just a panel of judges, but a hall full of people or a grandstand full of people, and expect everybody just to be able to turn on a performance, and get past it. It's a big thing to undertake. So it does take a lot of sort of training to help your brain convert that into positive energy.
So we were mentioning about how really a lack of stamina can lead to more nerves. So when you were competing at the CAWA level, the year you won, what did a typical practice look like for you?
It varied depending on the time of year. So I was, I suppose, fortunate in a sense that the dance school I was at, the Bowman School, was a relatively small class, and it was very, very sort of competition focused. So our classes through the year all were geared around the competitive season, and then we would have downtime during sort of October to December, where we would do exams and concerts and that sort of thing. So it very much was focused around championship technique, and we would do full dances through at times, but there was a lot of repetition, a lot of taking movements and really breaking them down and, analyzing every bit of that particular movement. And that's something that I did at home in my practices as well. The benefit of having, a teacher and a mum who's a PE teacher. So there was a lot of, those old school methods of, breaking things right down, looking at the whole movement, then breaking it down and building it back up to perfect those little tiny details. And it was, we really analyzed everything, depending on what the steps were, but it was everything from the way that your foot was positioned on the front of the leg to the way it was, going from third aerial position to a fourth intermediate aerial extension. How did the ankle move? How was your foot positioned? And what was the transition between those movements? So real detailed technique focus like that was a really big part of my classes and my individual practices and my private lessons as well. So that definitely sort of shaped my dancing, I think, and a lot of the, did a lot more of the sort of stamina work at home by ourselves, and then class, it depended on, obviously what the steps were and what different people in the class were maybe struggling with. It was a very, we all did sort of work together. We worked through the same things, which has its benefits, and there was a real sort of team element to that as well. So it was it was very, very focused, very, it was very strict, but that was because we all had goals, and it was about working out the best way for each of us to achieve our individual goals, but doing it all as a class. And then the individual private lessons and home practices were where we then sort of took away we had our own takeaways to go and work on, and then come back to the next lesson with them hopefully improved. So, but it was very, I spent hours at home, at classes, on the backs of chairs, standing, practicing high cuts, standing, actually doing things without hopping, then adding the hop, then adding the hands. It was really about training your feet, your legs, your body to learn what the movement felt like, so that it became an automatic sort of performance. It became something you didn't have to think about all the time, because there's so many things that you're trying to think about all at once in a dance. You'll know what it's like trying to think about all the different elements of it. You don't want, certainly for the basics, you want your body just to know what it needs to do when it comes to shedding and pas de bas, so that the things that are that bit more tricky are the ones that you can divert your sort of brain power to. But I think in the lead up to to August and to Cowell, it tapered off slightly. We didn't run classes during the summer holidays for the school. It became more private lessons. There would be the odd group classes, but mostly it was one-to-one lessons and practice at home. And then of course we're here in Scotland, we're at Highland Games every day at the weekend. So we did a lot more focused individual work then, and in the sort of week leading up to the Commonwealth and Cowell, actually tapered it down a bit so that our legs were fresh, because at that point you're looking for your peak performance, and it's, I guess, like running a marathon. You don't go out and run a full marathon a few days before you do it in a race. So that was the same principle that we applied, and I guess that's the PE teacher backgrounds coming in there. But it was very much everything, the hard work is now done. So for the last few weeks, it's just about keeping it ticking over and making sure that you preserve your muscles and your body, so that they're absolutely ready to give your peak performance at those World Championships.
When you were working at home, and that was when you worked more on stamina, was that just going through full dances, or did you do any cross training or anything like that?
I did some when I was about, I think, I want to say when I was about 13 and 14, we started doing some plyometrics at home, because I wasn't, a natural elevation wasn't something that I was blessed with. I did, I got better at it as we went on, but that was something we started doing a lot more of, and building that into practices. And it was a combination of doing, 7-8 step Highland flings, or taking the swords and putting blocks under the swords so they were a little bit higher, so you maybe didn't do extra steps, but you made it more difficult. So those were the sorts of things that we built into the practice. So you were always sort of overloading your body and asking it to do that little bit more than it would have to do in a competition, which in theory should have eased the nerves, but my brain didn't work that way. So it would we would pick certain things to focus on in each practice. So if it was, we would dance through, if it was a fling day, then we'd work through all the movements and then dance it through maybe at the start and then dance it through again, maybe at the end with an extra step. So yeah, overloading and again, loads of drills, loads and loads of, we're going to just go and do another 50 shuffles, stand and then hop. And oh no, that wasn't good enough. So back to standing. loads of repetition.
So you won the juniors, right?
Yeah.
And then, so how did you do in the juvenile? Was it all kind of doing well in juvenile and then leading up to juniors, that was the main goal? Was there a specific moment that you decided, I think I have a good shot, I really want to try and win this thing?
So I'd been lucky that I'd had a successful sort of championship career from when I was 8 in Scotland. So I'd won my first sort of 3 championships when I was 8, and then had been doing consistently well in championships at home through all of those years. And then, at the Scottish Open, I'd been sort of first or second every year since I was 8, first or second overall. So, I'd always sort of been within the kind of top couple of dancers at that level. So coming into, the world finals, obviously at 12, your first goal is to qualify, because it doesn't, and as well as everybody, it doesn't really matter what's gone before. When you come to Cowell, it's a completely different ball game. The best of the best in the world are there, so you can have come in winning every championship in your home country that year, but it's going to come down to what you do on that day. So the goal was to qualify, which I did at 12. And then again at 13, I'd won the Scottish, and I think I'd placed pretty well in the Commonwealth the week before. At that point, the Commonwealth was still a bigger age group. It was 13, 14 and 15 years altogether. So at 13, I think I'd placed 3rd overall in the Commonwealth. So I'd come in actually feeling quite positive about, my chances of maybe getting a placing in the World Finals at 13. And then the fling, which that year was the dance I'd been doing the best in, I went over my foot in the shake and rock step and had to come off the board in the World Finals. So it didn't get off to the best start. And I can't remember if I got a medal that year. I maybe got like a 6th or something in one of the World Final dances. But it was then when I was 14 that I got my first trophy, and I was 3rd overall. And it was a funny year because my friend Gillian O'Leary, who's the same age as me, from South Africa, and Joanna Buchan, who's a year younger than me, from Scotland, the 3 of us, I think we had each got a first place in the first 3 dances. So I'd sort of gone from, 12 and 13 getting into the top 20, but not being able to place, to then suddenly at 14. And I don't know if it was just a combination, as it's you move through the years and people move out the group, so you're that bit older, there's a bit more sort of maturity in your dancing, but that it was a big leap in terms of my actual world results, to come in and then I ended up placing 3rd overall, and it was just the 3 of us. Well, it was a real kind of celebration feeling that, we'd all, Gillian had been, I think, the same as me. Neither of us had been in the top 6 at 13, and then there we were standing at 1st and 3rd at 14. And that was, that was a great moment. And I think that was the point where I thought, this is now the goal. You maybe wouldn't have said that out loud at the time, but it was one you kept yourself. I thought, it became a little bit more like a realistic possibility at that stage. So I think before that, you've had your great results at home, and you're doing well at the Scottish Open on the Friday, but there's a big difference between then being able to convert that to success on the Saturday. So that 3rd place trophy at 14, I think, was the first time where I thought, okay, maybe I have got a chance of being in that kind of top tier. So, and then was 3rd again at 15, and I think 2nd in the Scottish that year as well. So then coming into the 17s, that was a big year.
So did you win when you were 16 or 17?
I won when I was 16. I won when I was 16, which was it was quite surprising, I think, because you come in at that and you think you're the underdog at 16 coming into the group. And all the groups are so incredibly tough. And it's, we had to think about 120 in the qualifiers. It was a big year. It was a big group. So it was that, it was quite surprising. And then at 17, I I was runner up. I think I missed by about 2 points. So I had a good couple of years in the juniors. It was that was good memories from those years.
Do you remember what it was like the moment they called your name?
I do. It's funny because so much of the day is a blur, and it's my Cowell memories are funny. I have some really, really clear ones from different years, and other sort of moments that are just a bit fuzzy. But that, I do. I remember the results really well because back in those days, they never used to announce all of the results together. They used to sort of jump between the different age groups to build the suspense, which worked. So we did, you got the fling and the sword result, and then they went to the other groups, and then we got the sheen shrews result, and they went to another group. So
It's kind of mean.
A little bit, yeah. It's good for the audience suspense, but not so good when you're the dancer sitting waiting on the result, or the parent and teacher, I guess. So I was sat on my mum's knee, and we always had our seats in the enclosure at the front of the main grandstand. And I can so vividly remember being sat there and waiting, and we'd had the sheen shrews result, and I think it had 2 firsts and a second, and you're waiting for that real result and thinking literally anything could happen here. You're so close, but this could all be gone with this next result. So there's almost a bit of you that thinks, just stop now, actually. Let's just stop now. And then, if this, I don't have to then worry about the disappointment if this isn't going to go the way I really want it to. But the moment when that real result came out was really, really, it is a really special moment. And my first feeling probably was relief because I think I'd come with being in the top 3 those last couple of years, and having had it as a goal, and having had, the success that I had in championships, and finally going, this is something that I might be able to achieve. There's always that bit of, well, but maybe you won't. There's always that other little voice. So there was definitely a bit of relief in there to think, I managed to do it. And then I just cried, and there was hugging and tears and all sorts. And yeah, it was really special. And I think that championship fling, or the champions fling moment is one that you'll never forget what that feels like.
No. If you had to give your younger self advice, I guess you kind of answered this about the stamina, but if you had to give younger dancers advice, what would it be?
I think it would be probably a couple of things, again, around, things like goal setting. I would always it's a tricky one, because I always think when it comes to, if you're a competitive dancer and, you've got really clear goals in terms of what you want to achieve as a competitor, to whether it's winning championships or placing in championships, then I think it's about setting yourself realistic targets and not expecting too much of yourself too soon, and being able to take, because you're going to have disappointments along the way. It's a very rare person in dancing or in any sport that just automatically is, winning all the time. There's, wherever you start, you're going to have bumps in the road. So I think I would always advise dancers to set themselves targets that are realistic to where they are in their development as a dancer, and to work out, a sort of proper roadmap for getting yourself there, and not be too hard on yourself if things take a bit longer than you would like them to. I think we have such a huge focus on competition, and that's really great, and it's really important, and you have to have such a strong sort of drive and work ethic to be able to achieve at those high levels, but there is a sort of emotional side, and that we were talking about that before with the anxiety and the nerves, and I think a lot of dancers maybe struggle with that side of things. So I would encourage dancers to focus on themselves, focus on where they are, where they want to be, and try and forget about everything else that's going on around them, and not worry about what other people are doing or other people are achieving. Everybody's on their own path, and everybody has tremendous capabilities, and for some people it will be winning world championships. For other people it might be more performance based. So I think it's don't be disheartened if things take longer than than you want them to, and don't be too sort of caught up in what else is going on around you and what other people are doing. Focus on yourself, and really work on what makes you the best version of yourself that you can be as a dancer. And the other side of that, I would say, would be just, it's kind of part and parcel of that, is maintaining perspective, and remembering the reasons why you got into dancing in the first place. Take time out of competition, whether that's just downtime at the end of the season. I remember Rebecca Thau in a couple of these interviews talking about how she changed up her her year and made sure that she had downtime after it. And I think that's a really great message, and it's really important, and it's something we used to do. We would, October to December, we did show work, we did choreography, we did exams, we had fun. I think it's really important to have that time away to connect with that side of dancing as well, because it's easy to just get yourself solely focused on one thing, and it can then be quite difficult to keep pulling yourself out if you have disappointments. If you're lucky enough that you have a smooth run all the way, then great, but it's not always the case. So yeah, perspective and realistic goals, and yeah, patience and work ethic.
I think it's very rare to have a completely smooth run for your entire dancing career. Yeah. Every dancer is going to have those competitions where you're going to have disappointments. How did you deal with those?
If I'm honest, I probably took them quite hard. I think that's, what we were saying before about nerves and anxiety, that's all probably wrapped into the same thing, in that I had very high expectations of myself. But that would have been true in everything, not just in Highland dancing. So I did take disappointments quite, I took them to heart, and I probably took a little bit of time to recover from some of them. Not all of them, but there were some really, really hard sort of, say losses is the wrong word, because it's never yours, nothing is yours to lose, but some results that were really big disappointments that I kind of took to heart, and I think that's why now it's sort of easy to say, oh, dancers, I would have perspective and set your goals and work. It's easy to say that now, because that's something that I learned over time I wasn't particularly good at when I was younger. I definitely put too much sort of pressure on myself. That's, my mum was great in there, family were great in there, kind of picking you up and reminding you that it's really not the end of the world. And it's then, I think the important thing is looking and trying to put aside the overall results, but looking at, right, what can I do better? So what was it about my performance that day that might have contributed to the result being disappointing, and what can I do to work on that and take positives from it? Try and always find a positive in something. Go, okay, well, so the overall result maybe wasn't what you wanted, or your overall performance wasn't what you wanted, but in amongst it, what did you do well? So let's take that and build on that, and then also go, right, well, and then alongside it, what are the things that you want to improve? So try and always find a positive alongside those things that you want to improve on, because if otherwise you're just going to keep grinding yourself down. And you have to always build on it in a positive way, and realize that the world will still keep turning, and you just get up and revise your approach any way you can. If there's things you want to change, then take positive steps to change them, and don't always focus on the things that didn't quite go the way you want.
Yeah, I think that can be really difficult for dancers, because especially when we are working towards a goal and then we get a result that isn't in line with that, it's hard for us to realize that this was just one day. You have a day where you didn't dance as well, and this was one set of judges. And I think for a lot of us, it could feel like that's fact, and that's like, now I can't do this because I'm not where I need to be. And it's really hard for us to realize you could dance the next day, the same dances, the same people, and you could dance differently. They could dance differently. The judges could be different. That was always difficult for me to realize, that just because something happened one day, that doesn't mean that's the way everything is forever. Like,
I think, and that is, I think, is one of the really difficult things, for certainly for younger dancers, and for some, older dancers as well, to kind of get your head around, because it's not, in every sport, there are different factors that come into play. But if, barring any disasters or false starts or whatever, if you run 100 meters and you're the fastest, you win. But everything we do is so subjective, and that's it's the reason that we have panels of judges, because people perceive things differently, and then there are so, you know, if you take the grandstand at Cowell, for example, and you were to take a poll, you could get so many different results from that day. And that is really difficult, I think, to sort of reconcile in your head when you're any age, is that if you feel like you've done the best you possibly can, and you might feel that's the best performance you've ever given, and it still might not be enough to have you standing there with a trophy at the end of the day. That's a very difficult thing to learn.
Do you have any funny competition memories?
My funniest one actually is probably it's not it wasn't actually in the championship itself, but when we went over to Canada to compete in the ScotDance Canada series in 2000, and it was the first time they held it at the West Edmonton Mall on the ice rink. So, I mean, it was huge. I think there were about 1,200 dancers entered that year. We were competing in the choreography competition, and we'd actually arrived almost a week before the competition started, but our suitcases didn't arrive. We had lost more than half of our luggage, and the cases started to come day by day by day, but it was like the choreography outfits nowhere to be seen. And
No.
by the time we got to the competition day, I think most Leona, that was in our dancing school, her outfit was there. My little brother was dancing with us at the time. He'll be delighted I've mentioned that. And most of his outfit was there. I think he was missing like a tartan waistcoat, but the rest of it was there. None of mine, nothing. So the only thing I had that was purple that matched was my like leotard and cycling shorts that we had to wear in class. So that's what I had to wear in the choreography competition at ScotDance Canada. My leotard and cycling shorts on the stage in this like massive arena in front of everybody. With
Are
like
there pictures of this?
There are pictures of this. There are. I think they're on Facebook. I don't know why I allowed that to happen. Yeah, that wasn't maybe my my best look. I mean, I kind of think I felt, I used to fall quite a bit actually. I had a bit of a propensity to slip over at times. Not so funny, but I did it at Cowell actually when I was little I think in the 10s at Scottish, and actually in the 8s as well. I fell a lot.
I fell in the finals.
Oh no.
Wiped out. Like I was in the middle of a pivot turn with Erin and I wiped out. Like I have a picture of me lying on the stage.
Oh no.
And she's still mid pivot turn, so she's got her arm reaching for me. Neither of us placed.
Oh yeah, that's awkward.
Yeah, it was really, the whole crowd went.
No, I did that only in the Scottish, never actually in the world. Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to ask is that you stayed so involved, even since you stopped dancing. You're a judge and you're super involved with choreography. Why was it so important to you to stay involved, and you still work full time? And how did you decide this is how I'm going to stay involved in Highland?
I loved it. I know I talked about being nervous and things, and that was all really true, but it was such a huge part of my life. I would almost go as far as to say it was a bit of an obsession for me. And I couldn't, it was a real, when it came to retiring, I was ready. My body was injured again. And I knew it was time. I probably, if I was totally honest with myself, I probably could have gone a year earlier, but I wasn't quite ready to hang up the shoes yet. So I found it really difficult to sort of give up that competitive side of things. So I always knew that I would find that hard. So I knew from when I was really young that I would want to stay involved in any way that I could. And actually I found that quite a bit scary actually, a little bit, it's a daunting feeling trying to think what will replace that, that massive part of my life. And nothing ever can really, and I think I was so lucky in that, I had so much success all through the years, and that feeling of doing well, of achieving your goals, is really kind of hard to replicate, I think. And that's, I would imagine, I would imagine there's quite a few people would feel the same. It's, when you've been so driven and it takes up so much of your sort of your brain, that it's hard to sort of think of how your life will look without it. And that, I think, is why I've always really tried to stay involved in any way that I can, because I I sort of need it to an extent. And it's, now it's different. My career has, developed over the last 10 years, and, that's kind of taken off as well. And I've probably got a good balance in life now. But in the early days of when I was just finishing competing, it was a wee bit of a struggle, to try and figure out what life was going to be like without that focus. So, and I was sort of lucky as well, because I'd sat my teacher's exams when I was 16. I passed my judges before I stopped competing, so I was able to sort of transition, and it wasn't all completely new. But I've always known it was something that I would want to stay involved with. At some point, I would love to have my own dancing school. I just needed to be a bit more settled in my career. I've sort of jumped about a bit between Glasgow and Edinburgh and London, so it hasn't really felt like it would be fair to set up a dancing school when I was still figuring out where I wanted to be. But having the choreography group, having Flings and Things, has given me such a fantastic outlet to be creative and to keep that involvement, and to stay connected with dancers that were some of my best friends, that I grew up with, but also with dancers that are just maybe coming out of competition in the same way that I was, and are looking for ways to keep going. It's great that through what we've been doing with Flings and Things, we can offer people opportunities to still be involved in some way, so that I get a real sort of sense of satisfaction in that regard, that I know how I felt coming out of it. So it's nice to know that we've been able to, in some small way, maybe provide a platform for people who are feeling the same. So yeah, it's a huge part of my life, and I love it. And I love the competitive side of it, and I love the performance side of it as well. So it's given me a lot, and I think I also just feel like I want to give something back, and people do that in different ways. And if I'm not yet doing that as a teacher, but this through Flings and Things, I can offer something in that regard. And by being on the part of the delegation to the official board, and working with different committees and things over the past years, that's a way that I felt like I can give something back, and hopefully help dancers that are coming through now, in the same way that other people helped me. So
I think it is so helpful too, just especially to have something like Flings and Things where you're performing for large crowds, but it's such a modern take on Highland, which is what's going to draw in those younger dancers, that they're going to see your performances and be like, I want to do that. It's so, it's difficult to find things where Highland it looks modern and it's really intriguing to that younger generation that are not as interested in, the traditional kilts and the bagpipes. And so being able to see that there are both sides of Highland when you get involved, I think is really helpful. So
yeah, well, I hope so. And that's it's the traditional side of it obviously is so massively important. I mean, that's what it's all about, and that's where everything stems from. And I know that the kind of more modern take won't always be to everybody's taste, but I just think there are so many great things happening there now. There's been teachers have been putting out phenomenal choreography for decades and decades and decades. We've been fortunate that we came along and started doing it at a time where social media was really taking off, and just from my work background and things, I sort of took what I'd learned there, and applied that to what we were doing with Flings and Things, and it took off. I think that's something that's really important for us as a Highland dancing community. It's a struggle to compete with all of the activities that are out there. If you look at the way other dance forms have moved on, and dancing shows that are there on the TV, everybody's out there trying something different to attract people in. So the traditional side of it is still massively important, and we do lots of that as well with Flings and Things. We do still put our kilts on, and we dance in venues all over Scotland every other week. So that's still massively important to us. But it's just something that's fun when you've spent your life being so disciplined and so focused on competition and doing the same dances and the same variations of the same steps over and over. It's nice now to have a bit more freedom to explore, and I think to be able to do choreography out with choreography competition gives us that bit more freedom as well. So it's we're having fun with it, and I think that probably comes across in what we're doing, and it's just trying to yeah, bring as many people along with us as we can. And, you know, if we can, as you say, if we can somehow showcase another side of Highland dancing alongside all the other amazing teachers that are doing just that, you know, in different countries, then, you know, we're just delighted to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking.